We're here speaking with Reverend Raymond Scott.
Minister.
I'm sorry, Minister Raymond Scott. I'd first like to start off by asking, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I came to Rochester in 1966, right after my wife and I got married, because she was here. And a guy who turned out to be my mentor was also here. And so I had two draws to come to Rochester. One was my mentor, and the other was my wife. I was born and raised in Buffalo. I lived in Buffalo for 23 years. And then 23 years later, I got married to my wife, Maxine. And then I liked it here, and she was living here.
Right,
and so
right.
came here, and then went off to school to a Christian college.
Okay.
To study for the ministry. And needless to say, that was a unique experience right off the bat, because this was during the height of the civil rights movement.
Right.
And we went down, we wanted to be pioneers, and just go, renovate the South, so to speak.
Right.
Help renovate the South. And unbeknownst to us, until we got down there, it was the North that really needed us more. And
Wow.
I say that because the racism was rampant down there.
Right.
It was very out in the open.
Right.
In fact, the Christian school that we went to, didn't integrate until a year before we got there.
Wow.
And this was a Christian school.
Right.
Other schools were integrating, but this was a Christian school and did not integrate until the year before we got there. And so we went down there to be involved and to finish my degree. I went from a junior college, a Christian junior college, to a 4-year school.
Okay.
And when we got down there, and I say it's interesting, when we got down there, we didn't have a place to stay there. All the married student apartments on campus
Right.
were full.
Okay.
So we didn't have a place to stay, so we had to look around other places, and we rented a room from this black woman who lived pretty close to the college, but my buddy used to have to come and pick me up to get to school.
Right.
He was married, and so he had a car, so he had to come and pick me up to get to school, and I had to be on campus all day. But that one of the options that we had was to look on the bulletin board in the student union, where some of the white people who lived in town were advertising their apartments for rent.
Right.
And it might be a flat, living upstairs or downstairs, but it was an apartment. And or it may be a house that they owned that they were just renting out to college students. And Harding College at the time was a university town.
Okay.
It was a college town. And so we started making calls on the bulletin board, from the bulletin board that was in the student union, and started getting numbers and then going and calling the people and asking them whether or not we could rent an apartment from them based on their advertisement on the bulletin board. So we would call them, and a lot of them were members of the Church of Christ.
Okay.
And so, because it was a Church of Christ town, so to speak, and so we would call them and ask them, tell them that I would tell them I'm a student at Harding. Oh, yeah, you're a student at Harding, good, yeah. And you're studying for the ministry? Yeah, I'm studying for the ministry. And you're a member of the Church of Christ? Yes, I am. Well, good, yeah, we'd be glad to have you come over and look at the apartment.
Right.
And I'd say, okay, let me ask you one question, though, before I go. Before I come, I said, do you rent to black people? No. Why, are you black?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Right? Yeah. And they would say, well, we won't rent to you. Okay. So, yeah.
Wow.
Call somebody else from from the list.
Right.
And I'd say, hello, my name is Raymond Scott. I'm a student at Harding. I saw your advertisement on the bulletin board in the student union. Wanted to come over and look at your apartment. Oh, you're a student at Harding? Yes. And I said, I'm studying for the ministry here. Oh, you're studying for the ministry? I'm a member of the Church of Christ.
Right.
You're a member of the church? Good, good. Yeah, well, we'd be glad to have you come over.
Right.
I said, let me ask you a question. Do you read the black people? No. Why? Are you black? Yeah. Yes, I am.
And these are all Christians?
All Christians.
Wow.
Yeah. So I said, so-called Christians.
Right.
And
right.
I say, well, okay, bye.
What year was this again?
This was in 1967.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I would call a third time. I'm going to ask them why next time.
Yeah.
So I call. Hello, my name is Raymond Scott. I'm a student at Harding, and I'm studying for the ministry, a member of the Church of Christ, and saw where you had an apartment advertised on the bulletin board in the student union here at Harding, and wanted to know if I could come over and take a look at the apartment. Oh, sure. You remember the Church of Christ? Yeah. You student at Harding, studying for the ministry? Sure. By all means. Be glad to have you come over and take a look at it.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. Do you read the black people? No. Why, are you black? Yes. Well, I won't read to you. I said, can I ask why that is that you won't rent to me? Why is it that you won't rent to black people? And she said, I just don't want them in my house. So okay. Well, I got a chance to speak in chapel. There was one liberal, or guy who was trying to act liberal, white guy, and he was studying for the ministry too, and they gave in those classes some of the student ministers or guys who were aspiring ministers. They gave them the opportunity to plan chapel for that week, and what was going to go on, and what the messages, who was going to deliver messages, and that kind of thing. So this guy wanted to tackle the race issue. He wanted to tackle it, you know. And he said, "Yeah, we got to get this out in the open, because this is wrong, blah 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 blah." And so he said, and I wanted you two guys, me and the other married student who was also studying for the ministry, wanted to have you two guys speak in chapel one day, or just read the scripture and then make your comments. Okay. So he said, I'll go first to start it off, and then you guys can figure out which one of you want to come behind me on the next day or the following day. Okay. So he went first, and that guy was scared to death. I mean, he talked strong when we were just the three of us together, but he was scared to death. He turned beet red, man. You know, when he was up there, he was scared to death, and he didn't know what to expect from them. Right. And so he went ahead and did it, and we were talking to him afterwards. He couldn't even hardly focus on us. He was so busy looking around, and
was he scared of his life?
He was scared. His eyes were just red. His skin was red. He was scared to death, but he did it. Right. And so we were standing there talking, and he was just looking around. And we talking to him, and he going, yeah.
Right. Short answers.
Yeah, because he didn't know if somebody was going to come in and attack him or what. He was just scared. Right. But he did it. Well, my buddy did the next one, and then I did the last one. Okay. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to talk about my experience when I came here. Right. I said, when I arrived on the College of Christian of Harding, when I arrived on the campus of Harding College, I said, we didn't have a place to stay. Right. I said, and we began to pull names off of the bulletin board in the student union, names of the people who lived in the town of Searcy. That's where it was, Searcy, Arkansas.
Okay.
And asked them if we could come and take a look at the apartments. And we were surprised that some of our own Christian brethren,
Black people. Oh, no, white
no,
people.
white people,
Okay, okay.
some of our own Christian brethren would not rent to us
Wow.
because our skin was black.
Right.
Whether it was they were afraid of us or whether it was that they were concerned with what their neighbors would think,
Right.
they wouldn't rent to us because we were black.
That is very surprising.
Yeah. And I said, Jesus says that you lead as Christians. You don't follow.
Right.
You lead. And he said, you are the light of the world. And you need to expose darkness
Right.
wherever it is and not be afraid to do so. And while I was talking, it was a large auditorium, and I heard something hit the door. Bam! And I looked, and this door flung wide open in the side of the auditorium, and this white boy had got up out of his seat, stormed out of the door.
Mad.
And mad. And then, so I just finished what I was saying, and as I was speaking, my pitch got higher and higher and higher.
Right.
And it was like, you don't follow, you lead, you know.
Right.
And then I just sat down, and then that was the talk of the day, you know, on campus. And they wondered, I wondered what was happening. And there was a guy on campus speaking at that time in what we call the lectureship.
Okay.
He came all the way from California. And I saw him in class. He said, you know, I really respect what you guys did in chapel this week. And what you said, what you had to say. And he said, that took a lot of courage.
Right.
And he said, it was hard for me not to follow you along that vein. But he didn't. You know, he didn't.
Because he didn't come behind you and say anything.
Yeah, he didn't say nothing.
Right.
You know, he never even mentioned it. You know, because he was speaking every night in what we call the church lectureship.
So he just speaking in vain.
Yeah. He didn't say a word, but he told us, I support what you did. And it was very hard for me not to come behind you and comment on that.
Right.
But he didn't.
Right.
You know, at least the white boy that planned the chapel, at least he planned it around that controversial, very relevant issue.
Right. Even
Though he was scared to death.
Right.
You know,
Right.
But he did.
Right.
So that only made me want to get back to Rochester, because the guy that was my mentor was the first black man that I ever met. First man that I ever met that talked about God like he really knew him.
Wow.
You know, the first one. So I wanted to sit at his feet, you know,
Really
learn,
listen to him, right? Listen to him.
And he was doing it up in Rochester here. He became the leader of an organization called FIGHT,
Okay.
which is an acronym for Freedom, Independence, God, Honor, Today.
Okay.
And so he was, in fact, I saw him on national television while I was down there. And what it was that he was back here in Rochester fighting against Eastman Kodak.
Okay.
To get them to provide jobs for black people. And Kodak was resistant to that. And so there was a constant brouhaha every day, something in the paper about that.
Right.
And he was outspoken,
Right.
you know. And so Kodak finally made an agreement with the FIGHT organization to hire 600 black people And then the very next day, they reneged on the agreement.
Wow.
And it hit the papers and everything. And
Right.
they said the guy that signed the agreement wasn't even authorized to sign the agreement. And he was asked during the meeting, "Are you authorized? Are you authorized?" And he said, "Yes, yes, yes." His name was John Mulder.
Okay.
And then Kodak reneged on the agreement the next day. The paper, it hit the news that the agreement was signed between Fight and Kodak, and then he reneged on the agreement. They reneged on the agreement the next day. So, of course, you can always count on the establishment to do the wrong thing at the right time, and that only fired up the issue all the more.
Right. Blew it up.
Yeah. So then it really became a hot issue. So they didn't want to sit at the table with us
Right.
at all, with them, with Fight at the time. I wasn't even there, but I was in Arkansas. So they didn't want to sit at the table with Fight. And so what finally happened was that Kodak had a shareholders meeting coming up,
Okay.
but it was going to be held in Flemington, New Jersey.
And Kodak's headquarters up here.
Yeah,
Right.
but the meeting was going to be held in Flemington, New Jersey.
Right.
So we said, they said at the time, somebody came, I don't know who came up with the idea of going to the shareholders meeting and getting some people to come over from New York City,
Right.
getting people to come from Rochester,
Right.
busloads of people to the shareholders meeting, and be outside, you know,
Like a protest.
kind of protest.
Right.
And but then somehow or another there was some decent white folks who had stock in Kodak,
Okay.
and what they did was gave the Fight organization their proxies. A proxy, a person can go in your place,
Oh, okay.
and vote for you,
Right.
and that kind of thing. And some people actually gave up their stock. And so they went to, they got a chance to go to the shareholders meeting, and it was about, I guess about 10 people or so. They got a chance to get into the shareholders meeting, and Kodak knew they were coming.
Right.
So they had seats for them right in the front row.
Right.
I don't know if they felt that was going to intimidate the people from Fight, especially this guy that was leading it, Minister Franklin Florence.
Uh-huh.
And he got up, and the wording became very, very, very like a slogan.
Right.
The wording that he used became a slogan. He stood up while the the chairman of the board was conducting the meeting,
Okay.
and or the CEO of the company was conducting the meeting, and he said, Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Right.
He said, are you going to honor the agreement that you made with Fight? And people started yelling and all that, you know, calling them niggers and stuff like that.
Right.
And he finally said, well, no, we're not going to honor that agreement. And he said, well, we're going out of here. He said, and we're going to give you 1 hour to make up your mind.
Wow.
You know? And so the 8 to 10 Fight people walked out, and the people were doing the cat calls at him and everything, and yelling at him and everything as they went. And, you know, you could hear the N-word, you know. They went on out. And they talked to those, it was about 600 people outside
Right.
that they brought from New York and Rochester and all that. Buffalo.
The fight club.
The Fight people,
Right.
yeah. And so then when I saw it, I saw Minister Florence on television when I was in Harding. He was speaking to the crowd. And he he talked to them and told them what had happened and everything, and so that we can give them time to think about it. And then they went back into the meeting, and they were conducting their business, and he took his seat along with the other five people. And again, point of order, Mr. Chairman, point of order. And Robert's Rules of Order, you know, being a parliamentarian. And point of order, and that stops everything when you do that. Point of order, Mr. Chairman, point of order. And that slogan became famous.
Point of order.
Point of order, point of order. Yeah. So he, point of order, Mr. Chairman, point of order. And yes, Minister Florence, we gave you some time to think. Are you going to honor your agreement of fight? And he said, well, no, in essence, we're not going to do it. He said, then Rochester is going to be in for a very long and hot summer. And he walked out. And they told the folk what they said and everything. And then we're going to have a march, and we're going right to Kodak's door in Rochester. And they freaked out. So when they got back to Rochester after that, then they wanted to talk. And they wound up, the long and the short of it is they tried to take the wind out of Fight's sails. Fight had wanted them to hire 600 black folks. On their own, they hired 1,200. You know? And so what is Fight, what is Fight concerned about now? They wanted us to hire 6, we hired 12. They wanted them to come through Fight, too. Well, we'll use Fight to recruit blacks and all of the other black agencies too. Yeah. Well, that was just to keep from recognizing Fight.
The strength that they
had.
Correct.
So finally, our convention was coming up, and they knew they had to do something, by their convention. Now, what they did, I remember we were up. They were calling back and forth to Minister Florence at the Fight headquarters that night till about 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to hammer out an agreement. And Fight had the jobs. I mean, they already had the jobs. What Minister Florence wanted for Fight at that particular time was recognition from Kodak of who Fight was, and in terms of it being a broad-based entity, and the leader of black people.
Exactly.
So essentially, that's what they got, and it was read off at the convention that night, and so people were, going crazy, and we won.
It sounded like a victory.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that got national attention. National. So Minister Florence, being the articulate, charismatic person that he is and was, he started getting calls from everywhere. Ron Karinga from us, the guy that put together, I forgot what his African name is, but he was running the organization called Us. He's the guy that put together Kwanzaa.
Okay.
And he's from California. And so he called Minister Florence and wanted him to come out and speak to the people in California.
The black people.
The black people in California. And he did. Stokely Carmichael, these are names you probably
that's familiar to me.
Yeah. But Stokely Carmichael had high praises for Minister Florence. And Mr. Franklin got him to come and speak in Rochester, which was a big deal. And Franklin had this old car. And when he came with Stokely in Rochester, this is a side issue, but he had this old car. And they were getting ready to drive down Jefferson Avenue. And when they were getting ready to drive down, Franklin's car conked out. And so they had to get out and push it to the side. Stokely Carmichael, Franklin Florence, and maybe Ron Jones. And they had to get out and push it. And that Stoker looked at Franklin. He said, "Now this is real black power."
Still
He said,
getting there.
Yeah, he said, "Here we are, the three niggas
Mm-hmm.
pushing a car down the street. That's power. That's black power."
Absolutely, three strong black
Yeah,
men in there.
yeah. So, but anyway, so that's the kind of notoriety that he brought, he brought to Rochester, and he was the most dynamic leader that this town has ever seen.
Okay.
And so that's when when I left school when Martin Luther King got killed, because I found out I could do my last 6 hours of study in my hometown.
Right.
I worked all the way up to then,
Okay.
and all I needed was 6 more hours to graduate, and I could finish those here. When I heard that, I said, I'm going.
I'm out of here.
Yeah.
This racist
My
place.
wife and my son, and
Uh-huh.
we packed up the car and we booked, man.
Right.
And we came back to Rochester, and immediately I got involved in fight, and ultimately it was just a couple of years later, good grief, but I became president of fight.
Right. Wow.
And
You.
yeah.
Wow.
So I was president for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
I had the longest tenure of any of them.
Okay.
So there were many issues that we tackled. One, I organized a rent strike.
Rent strike.
A rent strike.
Okay.
It was the only rent strike in the history of the city of Rochester. And there was this housing project called Hanover Houses, and it was right in the heart of black community, right up Joseph Avenue, which was the main thoroughfare. And it was a 7-building, 8-story high-rise.
Right.
And those buildings had openly exposed hot pipes running up the walls.
Right. From the steamers. Right.
And they connected to a radiator
Okay.
right up against the wall.
Right.
And then they had pipes going all the way through every apartment,
Right.
like that, and connecting with these radiators, and those were what heated the buildings.
Right.
Problem with that is that the pipes were openly exposed, the radiators were openly exposed, and kids were being burned.
Right.
So I went over and organized, I became director of Hanover Houses Ministry, and I went over and organized the tenants. They already had a remnant of an organization, and then I went over and revived it and tightened it up. And then I had been an organizer for fights, so I knew something about what to look for,
Right.
issues that people could connect
Right.
with.
And,
So I built an issue around those openly exposed high pipes, got to the tenants organization, strengthened the tenants organization. I went around and established building captains, one person. And then for the 8 floors that were there, 7 or 8 floors, I forgot now. But for each floor, I had a floor captain.
Right.
And the floor captain would report to the building captain.
Right.
And then the building captain would be a part of a steering committee.
Okay.
Each building captain would. So we would meet regularly, like weekly or something like that. The building captains would. And we decided, we went down to the housing authority and told them we wanted them to fix those openly exposed hot pipes. And we started doing press conferences about the openly exposed hot pipes, showed some people, kids who had been burned, and that kind of thing. They still wouldn't budge.
Right.
So we threatened them with a rent strike, and they still wouldn't budge. And so we did it right, contacted a lawyer, and she loved this kind of thing. Very good lawyer. And so she told us what we needed to do, and the tenants should not they shouldn't pay their rent, but they shouldn't spend the money. They needed to
Right.
pay it
When
to
everything's
us.
getting handled.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They needed to pay it to us.
Okay.
And we needed to set up a receiving station for that to happen. And the best thing I figured that we needed to do was have it outside unless it rained,
Right.
where people could come and pay their rent. I knew a guy that ran a security agency, and I told him we needed a security guard or a couple of security guards armed
Right.
to be there when people were collecting rent and be there all day for the 7 days. This 5 days of grace period.
Right.
You know, you might not pay it on the first, but you have 5 days to get it
pay it.
in without penalty.
Right.
So we set it up outside, and we were all around, and the security guard was there, and people came to pay their rent, and wound up holding about $40,000 of the money.
How many months was that?
This went on for, well, it was a large place now, so
Okay,
it was
okay.
about 3 months at the most. I forget now.
Okay.
And they started feeling the crunch
Their pockets,
in
right?
their pockets. Yeah. So they said, well, and every time, like I said, you can always depend on the establishment to do the wrong thing at the right time.
Right.
One of the board members, board of commissioners, said in a meeting, he talked about. I said, "What are you going to do if we don't pay the money? Go turn the lights off, turn the electricity off, cut off the heat?" And he said, "Well, that might be one solution to the problem."
Joking.
Man, we
right.
took that and we ran with it.
Right.
We put that in the paper and everything, and I started getting calls from everybody wanting to help. The council of churches, the black ministers, the just everybody.
Wow.
Is there anything we need to do? No. Fight, anything. No. We got it. We'll let you know, though. And so that hit the papers and all of that, and that was all over the news media, man. And so finally, I said, but we got to resolve this thing. And I'm thinking all the time, got to resolve this. What do we need to do? And so there was a black architect who had designed those buildings. And I went to him and I said, listen, what can we do to make that safe so that those kids are not, exposed to those type of things?
Right.
He said, what they got? I said, I want you to come over and take a look. He said, oh, I know, I know what it looks like. He said, I designed it.
Right.
He said, but what they got is the best thing for you. What they got is the best thing for you.
Just kind of shimmed it off.
Yeah. And I said, but man, kids have been burned. That can't be the best thing. But that's the best thing for you. That's the best. The you love is not present. They don't have a presence with you. If like you spend 19 hours on the computer,
Right.
then you're not here,
Right.
even though you're in the same room.
Right.
You're not here.
Right.
Somebody else can be more attentive and closer.
Then I would be right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the one you love's not here.
So you love the one who's there.
You love the one who's there.
Well, unfortunately, all this cut off around the time where you were talking about talking to the architect.
Yeah.
And he said he was kind of like brushing you off.
Yeah, he was brushing us off. So we built 2 housing projects in Rochester.
Okay.
One is still up. The other one was torn down because of, they wanted to revitalize that neighborhood.
Right.
But we were the first to do that in Rochester, fight organization. I signed the papers on both, although I wasn't the originator of them, but I was one that brought them to closure.
Okay.
And the architect that we used on the first one was a good guy. He didn't really care about money. He just loved being an architect.
Right.
And he was very creative.
Right.
Like that. So what happened was, I thought, since this guy brushed us off, I wanted to go to the black guy first.
Right.
And he brushed this off. Then I went to this guy named Bob Macon, who was a white guy. And he was the architect for Fight Square. And I said, Bob, I said, listen, I want to know if you were willing to come over and take a look at this problem that we got in Hanover houses. Because we've been in this fight with the Housing Authority now for a couple of months or so. And we got to bring closure to it.
Right.
We've collected a lot of that money. We're not going to give it back to them until they do what's right over here. So I said, would you come over and take a look and see if there's something you can propose? He said, sure, Scott, come over. So he came over. We took him up to one of the apartments. This is what we're talking about. He said, oh. He said, that's easy. He said, it's easy.
Yeah.
He said, you do it very inexpensively. So what do you do? He said, I would just get some masonite.
Right.
And cover those.
The
Just
pipes.
make a contraption that goes right down besides the pipe.
Right.
He said, I can put a white panel on it,
Right.
a streamline, so to speak, that makes it look attractive.
Right.
The masonite will be brown. That would blend in with the colors of the room.
Right.
And he said, and all I have to do is just take some masonite, cut it about this wide.
Right.
He said, and the masonite has holes in it, and it doesn't burn. And it has holes in it, so the heat can still come out through the holes.
Right.
And he said, and I can build a piece that will cover the radiator as well. We can do that in every apartment. I said, oh, wow. I said, would you be willing to come to the Housing Authority with us and explain that? He said, yeah. And so he did a kind of a mock-up on paper. And we told them we had a presentation to make at the meeting. And they said, okay, come. And so we went, he came with us, he explained. I introduced him, he explained what he was talking about. And the executive director of the Housing Authority looked at it and said, that looks good. He said, what would be the cost of that? I mean, comparatively speaking, you're talking about, I don't know how many apartments, but
A couple of hundred probably.
a couple of hundred. I think it turned out back then. It turned out to be about 100-some thousand.
Wow.
That's all.
Right.
Because the masonite was not expensive.
Right.
The wood panels, they just were decoration along
Okay.
the side of the masonite, and you just should put shellac on those, and they look great.
Yeah.
We showed it to the people. We showed it to the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority said yes. The people said yes in the projects, and everybody was happy. And the Housing Authority said, "You're going to give us the money back." We said, "We'll give it to you on a prorated basis.
As
Each
so
time
much
you
gets
finish
done.
a building,
Right.
we'll give you the 8 buildings. So each time you finish a building, I forget whether it was 7 or 8 buildings, but each time you finish a building, we'll prorate. If we got $40,000, we divide that by 8.
Right. Right.
Give you that.
Right.
And then as you finish another building,
Give you
we'll
that.
give you that. They said, okay.
And as they're working, money's still coming in
Money's
from
still
it.
coming in.
Okay.
So that's the way it worked. And we got what we wanted, and they got what they wanted.
Right.
And that finished off the restaurant. But when people band together and you work with them every way to keep them in the fold,
Right.
so that they don't, and not one person reneged on that. All the people paid their rent.
Right.
They came right to us. We had that tight.
Right.
All the people paid their rent, and not one person reneged.
Awesome.
So that was a highlight at that time, and as a result of that, I was involved in fight, but I wasn't the president at that time. And then, because I had the only base of people between church and Hanover houses,
Right.
that I had a very strong base of people that I didn't even recognize. I mean, I was just doing what I did. And so I was asked to be vice president of fight. And then the guy up and left about a year and a half into his term.
Right.
And then that just, it was just kind of dumped on me.
Right.
Here, you know. I said, man, I'm not ready. I don't want to do that. I mean, I felt like I was still a boy. You know?
It was real young at that time.
Yeah. I was 27. I think.
Okay.
So I said, I've never done anything like this, you know.
Right.
But I mean, I learned from
The previous.
Yeah.
Right. Or your predecessor.
my predecessor.
Right.
So he said, well, I'm leaving. So you're going to have to take it. You know, I'm leaving town. So he did, and I took it. And
Does
it
fight
went
still
well.
exist?
No.
Okay.
No. And the time for it, you know, was over.
Right.
You know, the time for it was over. Because now it's kind of like, I don't mean this in a negative way,
Right.
but now it's like, and I've had to remind some of these guys about this stuff, but we fought so hard to get to where we are, and then it can be sometimes like we found the enemy and they is us. You know?
Wait, say that again?
We found the enemy and they is us.
Wow, so
Meaning-
you accomplished a lot, and now you have to look within? Or-
Well, we have to. Well, ultimately, we got into politics because there's where there's the semblance of power.
Right.
But then, once people, in so many instances, get into political positions, then they become them.
Right. The people who they used to oppose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they become them. And if you talk about doing certain things, then it's like, well, you know, can't do that because of this, can't do it. Wait, they do it all the time.
Right.
What do you mean you can't
right,
do it?
Right,
You know?
right.
I was talking to somebody one time, and one of the politicians, and I said, I took this guy with me to talk with this politician, and he was trying to start his own business.
Right.
And I took him with me, man, and to meet with this politician. And he said, I don't know whether or not we'll be able to do this because we need this, blah, blah, blah. I said, man, you sound like them. I said, I don't need you to sound like them. I need you to do what they do.
Right.
You know, I don't need you to sound like them.
Right.
They bring somebody into one of their leaders, they'll walk through the fire with no shoes on
Right. Think
for
of
that person.
Think of every way that it could work.
Yeah, every way that
Right.
it could work. I said,
Right.
so I don't need you to, you know, give me the party line. I need you to do what they do.
Right.
Oh, okay, all right. Got on the phone, called, made a call right then and there,
Right.
set up a meeting for this guy,
Wow.
and he got some contracts.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah, he had his own towing company,
Okay.
and he wanted to be on the city's list.
Right.
You know, so they put him on the list. Yeah.
Hey, earlier you said that that you went to the South to I guess be a part of the
Civil rights movement.
in the South, but you noticed that it was more needed in the North.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I was growing up, thinking of remembering the Underground Railroad and everything, how they were coming up north, I would think that up north was more racially together than the South.
Yeah, it's like and that's true.
Okay.
But it was like rise this high and no further.
Got you.
Yeah.
It was tolerated to a certain level.
To a certain level.
But that was it.
Rise this high and no further.
Right.
You know. And so in the South, like I said, on the road construction, you see black folks.
Yeah.
And through Mobile, Alabama, you see
Right.
black folks. I mean, that Alabama, man, remember that was George Wallace country.
Oh wow. Yeah.
He was the governor of Alabama.
Right.
You know, But it was now you drive down there, and you can ask my wife, you drive down there, man, and you see black folks working in the road. Even one of my wife's favorite places to go is Cracker Barrel.
Right.
Go to Cracker Barrel here. The service is good. The food is good. You don't see no black folks though.
Same thing in Florida, in Orlando,
Yeah.
I should say.
Went to Mobile, Alabama. The managers were black.
What?
The people working there were black. You know, there were blacks and whites, but mostly
blacks, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the managers were black. Yeah, I saw two of them at different times. They're both black.
That's rare.
Yeah. And you got Golden Corral in that area, in Charlotte area. Black people.
I gotta go visit those states.
Yeah. The black people. And so it's they work behind the counters in some instances.
Right.
They in other instances they own. In other instances they own.
Franchises.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But up here, I mean, we're getting ready right now, to build a $35 million project right in the heart of the inner city.
Of Rochester.
Of Rochester.
Okay.
Right now. We're working on it right now.
Right.
And we're going to break ground in November.
Okay.
With this organization called DePaul. And when you look at that, there's a humongous opportunity to get black folks some jobs.
Absolutely.
But if you go around, there's a construction site, and you can see it while you're here, and you probably won't see it today because it's getting ready to rain. But I could take you right down to what we call the inner loop. And they've spent, it's going to be this year and next year probably before this thing is complete.
Right.
And they started last year. A lot of jobs there. And this is the honest goodness truth. I've only seen one black person. One on the job. So I'm saying I'm kind of like a consultant for this project. I was the one that brought this other project that we're doing now, the $35 million project, into the community and got this organization that I used to work for that I retired from, DePaul, to come in and look at doing the project there. DePaul is going to own it. But the construction jobs are what we need to be fighting for.
Right.
And the jobs that will occur in the aftermath.
Like maintenance and all
maintenance,
that. Right.
That's what we need to be fighting for.
At least 30% of it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The some brothers here see money and
Go blind.
yeah. It's like, well, they tell the other guy that I've been working with, you know, that should be us doing that. You know, when they say us, they mean them, not us.
As a black
As
hole.
a black hole.
Right.
Not them.
Right.
And so it's just, it's not as good here as it is down there.
So, right.
And some people from the old school would say, well, no, that can't be. That can't be because, you know, they were racist down there.
Right.
But it was out in the open.
Right.
You knew exactly what
It
you were
was,
dealing with.
right. And some white people didn't like it as well.
Right.
Right.
But you knew exactly what you were dealing with. So you knew what weapons to use.
Right. Mentally and physically.
Yeah, you
right.
knew what to do.
Right.
Because it was right there.
Right.
But here, it's everybody pat you on the back.
And hate you, but
Yeah. And then one of those times when they pat you on the back, it'd be a knife going through it, you know?
yeah.
So,
yeah.
it's a very, very difficult time for our people. Very difficult time. And the problem is we don't see it, you know. And we got a lot of, I was just looking on your website and how, what's his name? Sean Cone.
Carter, yeah, is opening charter schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He and let's say Magic Johnson, and I don't know everything.
Right.
I mean, those two guys. If he's doing, if P Diddy is doing that,
Right.
that's cool, and that's beneficial to us.
Right.
Magic has a string of businesses where he hires a lot of us. Outside of that,
What else is there?
yeah. I mean, if it is, you don't hear about it.
Right.
You know? And that guy's making millions of dollars.
Ton of money.
Millions, especially athletes.
Absolutely.
Millions of dollars, multi-million dollars. You know, Dwayne Wade gave $25,000 to his. This was a couple of years back. I saw where they honored him for giving a $25,000 grant to some
Students,
in Chicago, I think it was.
Right.
Great, but he was making
Millions.
$100 million over a 4 or 5 year period. I think it's 4 or 5. Him, LeBron, Chris Bosh got the same contract. It was $100 million. Now, Chris, if he continues to play, if he continues to play, he had a contract for $118 million. After LeBron left,
Right.
that contract, I think it was $118 million.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
So over, I don't know how many. It was like 4 or 5 years, something like that.
But that's still roughly $30 million a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope he puts all that money into some type of CD or something like that. And
Yeah.
that would be wow.
Well, no. The point is, I have no question as to whether or not he's going to handle his money well.
Right.
The question is, what's the legacy
That he's gonna leave behind.
that he leaves behind?
Right.
With Magic Johnson, you can see what the legacy is.
Right. Besides all the HIV and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What the true magic.
The true, yeah. He's giving back.
Right.
He's giving back.
Right.
You know, Dwayne Wade, one of my favorite players.
Right.
You know, Magic is my most favorite player of all time. But Dwayne Wade, you know. But what did he get back?
You can't see it.
Yeah. What did he get back? Michael Jordan bought a basketball team.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you giving back?
Yeah, let's give it back to him.
Right.
Yeah. It's entertainment for the people in Charlotte. You know. Is that it?
Well, what's for the common black people?
Yeah.
The regular folks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
That's
let's give it back. So there's some things that we have yet to do. We've made some tremendous strides. And when I said there's us, when you look at the city council in Rochester, there are 4 black people on the city council out of 9, and 1 Hispanic.
Those are good numbers.
Yeah, out of 9.
Right. That's pretty much half.
But guess that's overhead.
Okay. Right. Okay.
But why? Where generally might the Hispanic vote go?
To the other side.
That's why they won't let a 5th black person.
Oh, they know where that vote's going.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now it's kind of like we got a black mayor here.
Right.
In Rochester.
Female mayor.
Female mayor.
Right.
Sharp lady, lawyer.
Okay.
But when you look at, she's been able to do some things, and she's really helping us push this project that we're building, because that's part of her area that she came out of too. but she upset the white folks. She upset when she upset the guy that they were running, that she was running against in the primary. He was the incumbent.
Okay.
And the stats had him, the polls had him ahead, like 74 to 26.
Lee.
74 to 26.
So she came back and did something serious to him.
Yeah.
Wow.
And number one, a lot of those people that they obviously polled didn't live in the city.
Right.
They may have lived in the suburbs.
Right. The outskirts. Right.
And so when you got, who do you want, who do you think would be a good president? Who do you think would be a good mayor? Blah, 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 blah. Or the present mayor, he's done a good job. He did a lot of building. The problem is he was building up downtown. He wasn't building up the neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah. So she ran, and man, they were mad. They planned to try and come back and get her.
Couldn't do it.
They're trying now.
Okay.
She'll have to run again next year.
All right. Right.
But they're trying. And now I'm sure they're still playing. And they may even use a black guy to do that. Yeah.
That's an interesting point of view.
Yeah. They may use a black guy to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out.
Absolutely.
You know? But the question becomes, how do we act when we get there? Do we know how to govern?
Right. Since we've never seen it or done it before.
Yeah. Now she does, and she's been doing a phenomenal job.
Right.
But there were some times when we had some black people there. Nothing happened.
Didn't know what they were doing.
Nothing happened. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see just what happens. But the South is just moving right along, man.
I don't.
And what I was saying to you earlier
Uh-huh.
is that if blacks and Hispanics could coalesce, if they could just coalesce, get together, things could change rapidly.
I agree.
Very rapidly.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And, but in my situation, you know, I had a guy that I managed his campaign here, and he's really now the leader of the black community, and he really is. He's a politician. He's the first state assemblyman in the history of the city of Rochester. And when he was running, I managed his campaign when he was running for county legislature. This is his first time, and he won.
Wow. Okay.
And I managed his second campaign. He won. And then I was president of the fight organization then, and that's when fight kind of got into politics, and so he won. And then the state assembly seat came up, and he wanted to run for it. And
where was it?
we wanted him to run for it, and he ran, and he won.
Yeah, sound like a born winner.
Yeah. So he's the guy that in reality right now is the leader, and his thing is very, very plain.
Right.
When it comes to you, or poor folks, black folks, when it comes to you versus
Them.
you lose.
Period.
Everybody knows it.
That's the way it's constructed.
If it's them or you,
It's
you
them.
lose.
Right.
You know, he's the only one who's done that. The only one.
I can definitely understand that point of view.
Yeah, he's the only one that's done that, and he's the only one that have created leaders behind him. But some of them become them.
When they get in there,
Yeah.
they become them.
Yeah, yeah. So, so we have some work to do there. We have some work to do there.
What are your thoughts on relationships and marriage? What do you think can help, or the direction that's going?
In terms of interracial relationships, or
No, just black on black relationships.
in terms of where it's going.
Yeah.
For that, I go back to, and I never get out of my spiritual roots, but
Right.
On that, my wife and I have been married 50 years
Wow.
in January, and I'm sorry, June of next month, June 11th. The key ingredient that has kept us together is the Lord Jesus Christ being at the center of our home.
Okay.
We each have a relationship with Him. You know, that binds us together.
Okay.
That binds us together. Even in rough times,
Right.
that binds us together. Because in rough times, we may not be listening to each other,
Right.
but we always have to deal with Him.
Right.
And He will not let us deal with Him without having us deal with each other and resolve the issue. Can't do it. If you have a relationship with Him, you know what I'm talking about. You can't do it. He will not allow either one of us to deal with Him if we're not dealing with each other. So we have to get that squared first, then come back to Him.
Wow.
And when you do that, and you have somebody else to answer to, namely Him, who sees all, who knows all, when you have Him to deal with, it's got to work. Through the good times and the bad, it's got to work. You're going to have challenges,
Right.
you know, but at the core, He's right there. And if you can deal with, if you can develop a relationship with Him, if you were to ask her right now where you could have found me at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock this morning, she said, he's right in that room right there. Came downstairs and went right in that room right there. You know, and I'm with the Lord then.
That's your prayer room?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with the Lord. And that's been doing that for years. Like just about all of the 50 years. Doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes.
Right.
But the Lord, there's repentance in His process. You know,
Okay.
you mess up, Lord, I blew that one. I really blew that one. You know, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Because above and beyond what I did to her or she may have done to me, I did to Him. He's disappointed.
Right.
He doesn't like that.
Right.
But He loves me anyway.
Right.
When I had a bout with prostate cancer, and two things. One is I had one regret with that, just one, and that was that in looking at the possibility of dying, that I never told her enough. I felt that I loved her.
Right. And about your marriage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so at that point, I made up my mind from that moment when I came to that realization that I was going to make sure I told her every day that I did, that I loved her.
Wow.
You know, and I do. I told her 2 times already, I think, today. Maybe 3. I went to the Y this morning, kissed her goodbye. This was about, I don't know, early this morning, 7. And kissed her bye. So I love her. I love you too. Gone. Come back. Hey, what you doing? Kissing.
Man, you don't hear about relationships like that anymore.
Yeah.
You really don't.
Yeah. But that's why the ones that you do hear about like that sustain themselves.
Right.
They sustain themselves. You know. And she's talking more about love than anybody I've ever met, man. Anybody I've ever met. And when, as an example, when I was in, well, let me go back. When the doctor told me, going back to the Lord now,
Right.
when the doctor told me that I had prostate cancer, one of the things in that room, I always wanted it to be like when the pronouncement came, if it ever came, that I had cancer, or anything like that. I wanted it to hit me like water rolling off a duck's back. Didn't faze me at all.
Right.
That's what I wanted. And when the doctor told me, it was like, you know, and then that was it. Okay, what do you want me to do? What do I need to do? You know, not worried about it.
What would you tell let's say, a community of black people in order to better themselves? What would you tell them to better themselves?
Well, it's kind of like what we were just talking about before we started taping this again.
Right.
All wisdom comes from above. And I would encourage our community to get back to its roots.
Right.
I used to think, and I really did, I used to think that the black folks were the moral conscience of America. Not anymore. Not anymore. We became them. We became them.
Right.
I remember the first time I went to see a movie. I went to see the movie Slaves.
Mm-hmm.
There's the name of it. Dionne Warwick starred in it.
Yeah.
And she took off her clothes in that movie. You know, and I know it was about slavery and about real stuff. But I'm going, wow. I mean, I forgot the movie.
Right.
And it's like, what would her father think
Right.
if he saw her do that?
Right.
And he may have been alive at that time. I don't even know, but what would her father think?
Right.
You know? Well, nobody sees that. Nobody pays any attention. I mean, that's, oh yeah.
Just another thing.
That's another thing.
Right.
You know, the movie Straight Outta Compton.
Right.
You know, good grief, man. You know, my wife and I went to see that, and I was ready to leave after 2 minutes, man.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah, 2 minutes. I was ready to go. You know. So the point is that we got to get back to our spiritual roots, because therein is where our blessings come from.
Right.
The only reason we made it this far is because of what he did. Because of what he did through people. He never works independent of men. He always works through them. You know, so along comes Martin Luther King.
Right.
You know, so we have to, anything that I do, anything that I have done that has been of any good and had a lasting effect, those decisions were not made out here.
Right.
They were made in there.
Right. Praying.
Yeah. They were made in there. And sometimes it wasn't that he gave me an answer, but I knew I had his covering when I stepped out of there.
Right.
So whatever unfolded would unfold, and I always landed on my feet. Every single time. Always landed on my feet. You know. So when we lose that, then we're alone.
Right.
Or you may have people around you,
Right.
but you are alone there. You know, so that's the most important thing. We need to get back to our roots, and then maybe we can really become the moral conscience of America
Again,
again.
on a more positive note.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.